On November 17, 1986, a Japan Airlines Boeing 747 reported being stalked by an unidentified object over Alaska, and the U.S. military never released what they found. What makes this encounter different from the thousands of UFO reports filed every year is this: it happened to professional pilots over controlled airspace with radar confirmation from the ground. The crew weren't amateurs, they weren't alone, and the object they saw defied every explanation the authorities could offer, at least publicly. November 17, 1986. Japan Airlines Flight 1628 departed from Reykjavik, Iceland, bound for Anchorage. Captain Terauchi Kenju was at the controls, a veteran pilot with 10,000 hours logged. His crew included First Officer Tsuyoshi Jachai and Flight Engineer Yoshimi Ishizaki. The 747 carried 365 tons of cargo. It was a routine freight run across the North Atlantic. Around 5:11 p.m. Anchorage time, as the 747 cruised at 35,000 feet near Fairbanks, First Officer Jachai spotted something off the left wing. He called it out to the captain. Not a plane, not a helicopter, something that didn't match anything in their experience. Within seconds, it was joined by two more objects. The crew didn't know yet what they were about to spend the next hour documenting. Captain Terauchi leaned forward. He'd never seen anything like it. The objects were glowing amber and white light pulsing from their surfaces. They moved in formation, then scattered, then regrouped. They didn't behave like aircraft. They didn't follow the physics of conventional propulsion. The captain called Anchorage Air Traffic Control. He needed confirmation he wasn't hallucinating. Air Traffic Control heard him. They checked their radar. Nothing. The screens were clean, no targets matching the captain's description. But Terauchi was adamant. The objects were asterisk right there, asterisk, visible through the windscreen, moving with purpose. ATC told him to stand by. They'd contact Elmendorf Air Force Base. Elmendorf scrambled. Military radar operators began scanning the corridor where Flight 1628 was flying. After several minutes of searching, they found it, a target on their screens, moving in tandem with the 747. The object was there. The military had it. And now everyone in the chain of command knew something extraordinary was happening at 35,000 feet over Alaska. For the next hour, the 747 and the objects remained in proximity. Captain Terauchi performed maneuvers, climbs, descents, turns to test the object's response. They matched his moves. When he accelerated, they accelerated. When he turned, they turned. The objects never broke formation. They never lost him. This wasn't random observation. This was pursuit. The crew estimated the object's size at roughly 2,000 feet across, larger than the 747 itself. Terauchi reported heat radiating from them, distorting the air around their perimeter. The instruments in the cockpit began acting strangely. Radio static increased. The compass spun erratically. The crew felt a vibration through the fuselage they couldn't explain. Military jets were dispatched. An F-15 fighter from Elmendorf was vectored toward the 747 position. The pilot was briefed on the situation. Unidentified objects confirmed on radar in close proximity to a civilian aircraft. When the F-15 arrived, the objects vanished, not gradually, instantly. One moment they were there, the next gone from visual and radar contact. The F-15 pilot saw nothing. His radar was empty. He orbited the area searching. Nothing. It was as if the objects had never existed, except the 747 crew had documented every second. The military had tracked them on radar, and now there were official reports filed across multiple agencies. Flight 1628 continued to Anchorage without further incident. The 747 landed safely. The crew emerged from the cockpit shaken but composed professionals who'd experienced something they couldn't categorize. Within hours, the story leaked to the press. By the next morning, newspapers across North America were running headlines. The FAA opened an investigation. The National Transportation Safety Board got involved. The U.S. Air Force began collecting statements. What emerged was a consistent account from trained observers using modern instruments. The objects had been real enough to show up on military radar. The question was, what were they? Here's where the story gets murky. The official explanations offered were thin. Misidentification of the planet Venus, Aurora Borealis, reflections from ice crystals, but Venus isn't visible in November at that latitude. Aurora doesn't move in formation, and ice reflections don't evade fighter jets. The explanation satisfied no one, least of all the crew that lived through it. Captain Terauchi stood by his report. He was interviewed extensively. He didn't waver. He didn't embellish. He simply stated what he and his crew had observed with the precision of a professional aviator. His credibility was impeccable, yet the official record would eventually be filed away, the case marked unresolved. Declassified documents released years later showed the military had taken the incident seriously, very seriously. Radar data, pilot communications, and military response protocols were all activated, yet the public file remained thin. The gap between what the government knew and what it disclosed has never been fully closed. What we're left with is this: one of the most credible UFO encounters in aviation history, witnessed by professional pilots, corroborated by military radar, investigated by multiple agencies, and officially explained away by hypotheses that contradict the evidence. The objects were real enough for the military to scramble fighters, but not real enough apparently for the government to tell the public the truth. Captain Terauchi retired from Japan Airlines in 1996. He never recanted his account. He lived the rest of his life knowing what he'd seen while the world moved on. The official record sits in archives, a curiosity, a footnote, a case that remains unexplained, and it always will unless someone in government decides the public deserves to know. Subscribe. Each week we investigate another aviation mystery the official record couldn't close.